They still remember you guys. Dan Deerdorf always told me, where would we go into the Hall of Fame? You guys have a closet that needs to be filled or what? He would always say that. But you guys gave this city such a great history in football, and people won more than they thought. I mean, the losing seasons came along, but there were a lot of good seasons in the 60s and the 70s, of course, and Jim now was around for the 60s.
Yeah, Greg, it really was a great time, and I maintain that had we not lost Charlie Johnson 2 straight years when we were leading the conference, I don't think the Big Red would have ever left St. Louis, frankly, because there would have been a legacy here that would have sustained it during those years when we didn't do so well. And my hat's off to Charlie Johnson and Bob DeMarco and Ken Gray and Dale Meinert, some of those fellows I played with, and many of you maybe remember it, Sonny Randall, Bobby Joe Conrad, and of course John David Crow passed away. Those are great names in my memory.
Well, you know, too, in '64, we really should have won the Eastern Division. In those days, they didn't break ties, and so you could lose by a tie. Big Red had 2 ties, Cleveland 1 tie. And in '64, Sports Illustrated had the Big Red on the cover 3 times during the season, with Charlie Johnson and then Bobby Joe, or Sonny Randall and Charlie, but that famous picture of Charlie leaning into the goalpost, and the headline of Sports Illustrated says St. Louis is going to win 2 world championships, 1 in baseball and 1 in football.
Well, one of the games we tied was against Cleveland, in Cleveland, and the scores, I think 33-33, I think it was, and Groza and myself each were fortunate to kick 4 field goals without a miss. And later on, I became good friends with Lou Groza. Our daughter lives in Cleveland, and we got together. And he's just a wonderful man. He's since passed away too. But anyway, those are great memories.
Jim, when you got to St. Louis, that's what I was waiting for. When you got to St. Louis, you had to look at the team and go, am I going to run the ball very much with these guys? I mean, they got a lot of passing weapons here.
I can remember that when Don Coryell stepped off the plane, he was throwing the ball. And I'll tell you, if it really hadn't been for Jim Hannafin, who really came to my rescue, I had a meeting with Coach Hannafin. I said, Coach, I think I can really help this team. But we have to run the ball off tackle. And he and I diagrammed the off tackle play 8 or 9 different ways. And he was always in my corner. And eventually, he did get me in the ball game, and we became a pretty good running football team. We had Terry Metcalf, myself, and then, of course, this passing game that we had really scared the devil out of everybody.
One great game where you two combined to finish the game and ultimately win the Eastern Division Championship was the famous Mel Gray game with a phantom catch, and we go ahead. But you got the field goal, and Jim drove the ball down the field, correct?
Well, that's right. Jim, in overtime, just took the ball down the field, and the field goal went in to make the margin of victory. But the play that really worried me was when Gray was up in the air and caught the ball, and there was some doubt whether or not he was over the goal line, and no replay then. And I think the time it took the referees to determine whether it was a touchdown or not, I was standing there, and everybody thought when it was a touchdown that we'd already tied the game. Well, unfortunately for me, we were still 1 point behind. Can you imagine that guy who had that banner up in the east end of the stadium at the old Busch Stadium that said, "Give Bakken the boot"? It was up there every day on that. When you look down there, had I missed that, I would have been given the boot, that's for sure. And then Jim took over in overtime, and we won the game.
But you'd never know it, because I carried the ball 8 straight times. And I know that's against NFL rules today, to have a player run the ball 8 times. But anyhow, I got knocked down. And my mom and dad were watching the game back in Ohio. And over the top of the screen, they said, "Sudden death." But anyhow, after they got me up and I ran off the field, Jim came in the game, kicked the field goal, and they carried him off the field.
One of the great games you guys had was the great comeback out in Los Angeles. Still one of the great comebacks of all time.
Yeah, that's a fun story. I was reminiscing with Coach Hannafin before the banquet here, and we were way behind at half. I'll shorten it up a little bit. In the second half, we started to take over. Hart was throwing well to Smith and to Metcalf, and down the field we went. And so the game was, maybe a minute or so ago. We ended up on about the 30-yard line, and the clock was going down, and Hart was there. We were trailing by 2, and Hart was there with the referee. And, of course, everybody knows what's going to happen. Just let the clock tick down. And while I'm standing there, one of the rookies came up and hit me on the shoulder. True story. Boy, I'm sure glad I don't have to kick this field goal, he said. I said, okay, thanks. Well, we get out onto the field, and Jack Youngblood, who was kind of a friend of mine, he was a big lineman for the Rams, they called timeout. And Youngblood trying to ice the kicker, of course, and he had a very high-pitched voice. Hey, Jimmy, you're not going to make this one. You're going to shake that one just like you do your golf shots. You're going to shake it. They said, don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. And they're jumping in front. Anyway, the ball goes in. Now, the punchline is that we're ahead by 1 point with about 20 seconds to go. And this is the fun part. Jim Hannafin, he kept me with the team and let me be with the offensive line to get me this feeling of being a part of the team. And so I went over to get the tee, and I was going back out on the field to kick off because we're ahead. And I heard this voice, hey, Bags, come here. Turn around, and it's Hannafin. He brings, come here. So we're standing there, and Jim says, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with the kickoff? What are you going to do? You got to get together. You got to, I said, well, we could pooch kick it down just over the line, or I could lay it on its side and maybe roll it along the ground, or I could maybe kick it deeper. Just get out there and kick it. I was kind of pulling his chain at the time.
Jim, the 1,000 rushing season for a team that passed the ball.
Well, believe it or not, we had to run the ball once in a while.
Oh, my God.
And when we did run the ball, it did open up the passing game. And it's amazing if they put that ball out to the fullback and run it in off guard, and then have them try to cover a guy like Mel Gray on a cut down the side of the field. I mean, it's impossible to do. I mean, you either have to tackle the guy, you either have to play defense against the run, or you got to play defense against the pass. Well, if you guess wrong, it's a touchdown.
You talk about the 60s, and we could have won then. Well, obviously, we could have won a championship in the 70s, and I know you all talk about it, that you're just a defender away, maybe, in winning those cardiac years, 73 through 77.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about the draft choices back then, but I think that hurt our chances of keeping Coach Don Coryell, because the draft picks we really needed was some help on the defense. But it was really fun, and Yogi Berra has some good sayings, deja vu all over again. But I've just coined one here a few weeks ago and asked a question. I said, you don't need a place kicker until you need a place kicker. And you think about it, and that's kind of the truth.
Jim, your years here in St. Louis were terrific, and you had such a colorful team. And I think what's admirable is that guys like you still live here. You're here all the time. And so many players have stayed in St. Louis. That's kept the name alive and kept that history alive.
It's been a pleasure to live here in St. Louis, and to see all the people here tonight that I recognize and that have cheered and been behind us all these years. And I have a group of my golfing buddies back there. I have my family, my son, my daughter, and to be able to be part of something like this. I'll tell you something. When you have a Hall of Fame group, and you have Barbara Birkmeyer, and you have Leon Spinks, and Scott Rowland, and all these people that are playing in other sports, it's really an honor to be with them. And I think you feel the same way, don't you?
There's no doubt. about it. You go on, and I don't have the whole list in front of me, but with people like Musial and Shane and the rest of them that are in here, Greg, thanks to you and your vision. And I'd also like to take a moment to thank my family coming down, my wife of 52 years, Hope is here, our daughter Chris, who lives here, and our very special granddaughter Kate, who's a senior at John Burroughs School, and just an absolute fabulous young lady. Thanks, gang, for being here and helping me with this.
I know everybody out there appreciates what you did for us, and we welcome you into the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame.
Thanks, Greg.